Guys, welcome to Know How To. My name is Amit and you are watching the Angular series. So in this series we are updating all the Angular concepts from very basics. Okay, so if you want to learn Angular from basics, then you are at the right place. So in this video we are going to discuss about the data binding in Angular, and in our previous video we had discussed about the nested components in Angular. So if you remember, we had created one student component, and in that component we had created a table and we had binded the values in this component, and furthermore we had called this student component into app_component.html file, and we were getting a table values like this, right? And so in this video we are going to discuss about data binding in Angular. Okay, so what is data binding basically? So data binding is most of the code that we are going to write in Angular is the TypeScript code, right? So in TypeScript we are going to write the properties and we are going to bind those properties into our HTML file, right? So what are the different types of data binding that we can use in Angular? So the different types of data binding are interpolation, property binding, event binding, and two-way data binding. So in this video we are going to discuss about interpolation. So what is interpolation? So interpolation is used to bind component class properties to view template. Okay, so first we are going to create a class property into our component class, and then we are going to bind it to the view template. So basically it is going to flow your data into only one direction, which is from component class to view template, right? And how we are going to use interpolation? So the simple process to use interpolation is, we are going to use the double curly braces as you can see over here, and inside that we are going to bind the particular property. Let's see it into action. So this is my Visual Studio, and here what I am going to do in app_component.ts file, let's say I am going to create a property name as firstName, and the type is a string, and let's say the value is Amit, and I'm going to use this property into my HTML file, right? So let's say a div, and inside that double curly braces and the name of the property, which is firstName, right? And if you are going to save it, then it will compile automatically, and you can see the value of Amit as here, right? So this is how a data binding, which is interpolation, is going to work. So similarly we had binded title, and we had created a property as title into our TypeScript file, which is student details, and here we had binded it, right? So this is how it is going to work. So for now what I'm going to do, I'm going to comment these two things so that we can, will not get confused, and I'm going to make it as h1 element only. So here you can see Amit, right? So this is interpolation basically. So in interpolation, we can bind, or we can concatenate a hard-coded string to the property also. So we will see this into action. So for example, here the first name is coming like this, and I'm going to concatenate it with a hard coded string, like say name, which is a string, and here you have to concatenate you have to use plus symbol, right? Save it, and here you can see the name equal to Amit. So this is how it is going to work, right? And apart from that, what we are going to do, we can use interpolation as inside interpolation we can use numbers also. So for example, if this is h2 element and here I am using interpolation, and let's say 1 plus 2 plus 3, and you can see here we are getting the value as 6, right? So this is how interpolation is going to work. So basically we can add numbers inside this interpolation or curly braces also, and it is going to give us the values, right? And apart from that we can create a method as well inside our TypeScript class, and we can call that particular method into HTML also. So basically we can call a particular method using interpolation as well. So we'll see this into action. So in my TypeScript file, let's say first name is Amit and the last name, this is my second property, and the type is again string, value is Raghuvanshi, and here I am going to create a method which is, let's say, getFullName. It is a method, so double curly braces, and the return type is the string, and the definition of this method is, let's say, return this dot first name plus this dot last name, right? And so basically what I am going to do, I had defined this getFullName method and the return type is a string. And what is this keyword? This keyword is basically a particular keyword which we are going to use inside our component class, and the scope of this keyword is related with this class only. So whatever property you are going to define into this app component class, you can use that property with this keyword, right? So what I am going to do, I am returning the first name and I am adding the last name with that one, right? So in HTML file, what I am going to do, in HTML file I am going to create full name, let's say h3, and this is interpolation. Here inside curly braces I am going to call this method which is getFullName. So what should I do? I will copy the particular method name and I am going to paste it here, getFullName, and it is a method. So like this, save it, and here you can see full name is Amit Raghuvanshi, right? So basically this is how you have to call a method inside interpolation. So there is no space between my first name and last name. So what I can do in this case, here I can create a space and I can save it. So here you can see the space between these two letters, right? So this is how you have to use a method, or you have to call a method inside interpolation, right? So this is all about interpolation, and the next part is we are going to discuss about interview question. So what is IV in Angular 8? So this is a new rendering engine which we are going to use in Angular. So it is a new rendering engine in Angular, and in Angular 8 it is released as opt-in. So basically if I want to use it in Angular 8, then I can opt the IV engine, and in Angular 9 which came in February 2020, and there by default the rendering engine that we are going to use is IV, right? And what it is going to do, or what is the task of our rendering engine? So basically our rendering engine, or this IV rendering engine, is going to take the templates and components that we have written, and it is going to translate them into HTML and JavaScript. so that the browser can read and display that particular file. Right, so I had already told you that browsers does not understand TypeScript, so the rendering engine is going to convert that TypeScript into JavaScript and it is going to display into our browser. Right, so this is all about IV rendering engine. And the next question is, what is the main purpose of Bazel in Angular 8? So what is Bazel basically? So Bazel is an open source build and test tool. It supports projects in multiple languages and builds up output for multiple platform. Okay, so it is not platform specific engine. It is used for building and testing our Angular apps. So Google had invented this Bazel, and it is going to help us in building and testing our Angular application. It allows us to break an Angular app into distinct build units. Right, so basically, as I had already told you, that in a particular Angular app we can have a number of modules, and these modules are defined by ng module label. Right, so suppose in my Angular app, if I am going to have two ng module, then it is going to break down my Angular application into two modules, and whenever I am going to make changes, let's say one module that we are going to have is component module or employee module, and the other module is student module. And if I had made changes into my employee module and there are no changes into student module, so what Bazel is going to do, it is going to build and it is going to build our employee module only. Right, so that the build will get speed up and it is going to give the output into a minimal time. Right, so this is how a Bazel is going to get used into Angular 8. And what is the purpose of CodeLyzer in Angular 8? So again, what is CodeLyzer? So CodeLyzer in Angular 8 is again an open source tool that is present on the top of TSLint. If you remember, I had already told you that in our Angular app that we had created, there is a file known as tslint.jsn, which is going to be used for our standard coding guidelines. Right, so in a particular application or throughout a company, we are going to use some standard coding guidelines. Those coding guidelines we can define into this tslint.jsn, and CodeLyzer is going to make sure that those guidelines we are following into our Angular app. Right, so basically the main purpose of CodeLyzer is to verify whether the Angular TypeScript 3.4 projects are following the set of linting rules or not that we had defined in tslint.jsn. So the main functionality of CodeLyzer in Angular 8 is to check the quality and correctness of the program. Right, so what it is going to do, it does only static code analysis for Angular and TypeScript code. Right, so the complete coding guidelines are written into this tslint.jsn file. Right, so this is all about our interview questions, and thank you, and please subscribe know how to get more updates. Thank you.